Ever wondered why some classic Hanna-Barbera episodes vanished without a trace overseas? You'd think a studio famous for Scooby-Doo, Yogi Bear, and the Flintstones would be safe from controversy. But sometimes the charm turned a little too strange, or a little too daring for foreign broadcasters. From lost adventures to misunderstood experiments, some of these episodes were quietly locked away, never to air again. Let's uncover the strange and forgotten cases where Saturday morning cartoons went just a bit too far. Number 15. Reflections in Crime, Super Friends, the legendary Superpowers show, 1984. It was meant to be just another over-the-top villain of the week story. Instead, Reflections in Crime became one of the eeriest and most censored Super Friends episodes ever produced. The villain Mirror Master traps his victims inside mirrors, turning reflections into prisons. What was supposed to be comic book fun turned unexpectedly creepy on screen. The sequence showing people screaming behind glass was enough for several European broadcasters to pull the episode. For younger viewers, it blurred the line between adventure and horror. Censors in the UK and Australia thought the imagery might frighten children, especially the distorted faces pressed against reflective surfaces. What didn't help was the show's unusually somber score, making the whole episode feel more like an experimental sci-fi film than a Saturday morning cartoon. Hanna-Barbera never officially banned it, but it quietly disappeared from rotation in multiple countries. When it resurfaced decades later on DVD collections, fans were stunned at how mild it seemed by modern standards. Still, Reflections in Crime remains one of those fascinating examples of how even a superhero cartoon could spook entire broadcasting boards. Sometimes all it takes is a little too much imagination and a mirror that stares back. Number 14. City in a Bottle, the all-new Super Friends Hour, 1977. You'd think a Superman story about bottled cities would be harmless, right? City in a Bottle proved otherwise. In this episode, Brainiac shrinks down famous world cities to add to his twisted collection. The problem came from one line in the original script, a reference to a villain as ruthless as Hitler. That single historical name was enough to cause chaos overseas. In Germany and several European countries, networks demanded the line be changed. Some refused to air the episode entirely until a revised version replaced the name with Alexander the Great. What was meant as a throwaway comparison suddenly turned into a full-scale censorship debate. Even after the edit, the episode was treated cautiously. Broadcasters claimed the imagery of entire cities being imprisoned in bottles felt unsettling in post-war Europe, echoing fears of destruction and loss. The irony? The message of the episode was about preserving life and cooperation, pure Super Friends optimism. Today, City in a Bottle stands as a reminder of how sensitive context can be. One simple line of dialogue turned a Saturday morning adventure into a diplomatic nightmare. It's a strange legacy for a cartoon meant to teach teamwork, but that's exactly why fans still talk about it. Number 13. Rock Odyssey, Hanna-Barbera Special, 1987. Now this one isn't just rare, it's practically mythic. Rock Odyssey was a feature-length Hanna-Barbera experiment unlike anything else the studio ever made. Blending music, surreal animation, and a mysterious female protagonist journeying through the decades, it was supposed to celebrate the evolution of rock and roll. But the tone turned far darker than anyone expected. There were scenes of heartbreak war imagery and surprisingly intense emotions. Overseas broadcasters, especially in the UK and Japan, found it far too heavy for family audiences. The Vietnam-inspired segments and psychedelic visuals made it feel closer to an art film than a cartoon special. It was quietly shelved and barely seen outside test screenings. Even in the United States, Rock Odyssey remained unreleased for years. Bootleg copies spread among collectors who described it as Hanna-Barbera's Lost Adult Experiment. The animation was vivid, almost hypnotic, filled with music from Little Richard and the Moody Blues. It had ambition, emotion, and a tone that felt completely out of place for Saturday morning TV. The special eventually leaked online, and fans were stunned. Rock Odyssey wasn't bad. It was brilliant, but too brave for its time. It remains one of the boldest creative risks Hanna-Barbera ever took, and the fact it was hidden overseas only adds to its haunting reputation. Number 12. Rude Removal, Dexter's Laboratory, 1997. Imagine a kid's cartoon where the main characters accidentally create rude versions of themselves. That's exactly what happened in Rude Removal, one of Dexter's Laboratory's most notorious lost episodes. The plot? Dexter builds a rude removal machine to separate his and Dee Dee's bad manners from their good ones. Predictably, chaos follows. The result was hilarious, but also questionable. The rude clones constantly insult everyone, blurting censored expletives and wild tantrums. While the creators added bleeps, the implication of swear words was unmistakable. Networks overseas immediately said no. Cartoon Network itself refused to air it anywhere outside controlled previews, fearing it would spark complaints. Ironically, fans who saw it decades later found it relatively tame, more cheeky than shocking. The exaggerated politeness of the good clones made it an unexpectedly smart piece of satire. But in the late 1990s, anything suggesting foul language was off-limits for children's television. Overseas broadcasters, particularly in Asia and Europe, pulled it entirely. Wasn't until 2 decades later that Adult Swim released it online, turning it into a cult favorite. Rude Removal stands as proof that even clean humor can get you in trouble if you push tone and timing just a little too far. It's Dexter's purest chaos, funny, clever, and forever slightly too rude for prime time. Number 11. The Prowler, The Flintstones, 1961. Now here's a surprise from the Stone Age. The Prowler was a first-season episode of The Flintstones that caused an unexpected stir overseas. The setup was classic sitcom gold. Fred suspects a prowler is sneaking around Bedrock, and chaos follows as he tries to protect his home. Sounds innocent, right? Not to every broadcaster. The nighttime tension coupled with Wilma's frightened reactions struck foreign censors as too suspenseful for a comedy. Some regions in Europe considered the atmosphere too realistic and unsuitable for young viewers. Even the title, The Prowler, sounded more like a crime drama than a family cartoon. In hindsight, the episode feels like a clever parody of early television thrillers, not an attempt at darkness. Fred's exaggerated paranoia leads to slapstick gags, misfires, and a punchline that lands perfectly. But back then, the line between comedy and fear was much thinner for children's programming. When reruns aired in the 70s, The Prowler was quietly omitted in certain European rotations, replaced with lighter episodes. It later reappeared uncut in global collections, where audiences finally got to see how harmless it really was. It's a funny reminder that what one country calls suspense, another might call nightmare fuel. And somehow, even in Bedrock, Fred Flintstone managed to get banned for being too intense. Number 10. Kung Fu Kitty, Hong Kong Phooey, 1974. At first glance, Kung Fu Kitty looked like pure Hanna-Barbera, fun a bumbling hero, a goofy villain, and slapstick kung fu chaos. But when the episode crossed into Asian markets, the laughs stopped. The exaggerated accents, fortune cookie dialogue, and ancient wisdom jokes came off as dated stereotypes rather than parody. Networks in Japan and Hong Kong were quick to drop it, calling the portrayal tone-deaf and embarrassing. It wasn't malicious. Hanna-Barbera was just riding the global kung fu craze sweeping the 70s. But the studio's idea of East meets West humor didn't exactly age gracefully. Even fans admit the episode feels more awkward than offensive, a relic of its time. Overseas, though, the humor didn't land, and the episode was quietly shelved. The animation still shines with bright energy and catchy sound effects, but Kung Fu Kitty remains a reminder that jokes don't always translate. Number 9. The Vampire Strikes Back. Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, 1980. The Vampire Strikes Back had everything a Scooby-Doo fan could want: foggy castles, a spooky vampire, and plenty of Scooby snacks. But when it aired overseas, several broadcasters thought the atmosphere was a little too gloomy for young audiences. Networks in Asia and Eastern Europe pulled it from reruns, uneasy about its gothic tone bats and dark visuals. Even though the villain was unmasked in typical Scooby fashion, the eerie setting crossed a line for certain censors. The irony? It's one of the most stylish Scooby episodes ever made, full of cinematic lighting and clever suspense. Watching it today, it feels tame, almost charming, but back then just a hint of horror could get a cartoon banned. Sometimes mystery solving got a little too mysterious. Number 8. The Planet of Doom. Space Ghost, 1967. Before late-night comedy turned him into a meme, Space Ghost was pure Saturday morning heroics. But The Planet of Doom packed too much punch for its time. The villain is vaporized in a blinding flash, and that single moment caused panic overseas. Australian and British censors thought the scene looked too intense for children. The animation was ahead of its time: bold colors, deep shadows, and real tension, but the emotional weight felt too heavy for Saturday mornings. When it reappeared decades later, audiences were puzzled that something so mild was ever banned. The Planet of Doom proved that Hanna-Barbera could do cosmic drama long before animation was taken seriously, and sometimes that ambition scared the networks more than the villains did. Number 7. The Great Gazoo episodes. The Flintstones, 1965. When The Great Gazoo arrived in Bedrock, audiences were divided. This floating green alien gave Fred and Barney futuristic gadgets, turning the Stone Age sitcom into a sci-fi comedy. American kids loved it. Overseas? Not so much. Networks in Italy, France, and Latin America skipped the Gazoo episodes, claiming the sci-fi twist broke the show's prehistoric realism. The aliens' slang gadgets and cosmic antics confused younger viewers and annoyed adults who preferred simple domestic humor. In hindsight, Gazoo was Hanna-Barbera testing its creativity, a bridge between the Flintstones' sitcom roots and the studio's later cosmic adventures. Today, those too weird episodes are cult favorites. Bedrock might not have been ready for aliens, but Hanna-Barbera clearly was. Number 6. The Ice Monster. Johnny Quest, 1964. Johnny Quest pushed boundaries, mixing adventure mystery and science fiction. But the Ice Monster crossed into controversy overseas. The episode's portrayal of Himalayan villagers drawn with exaggerated traits and outdated accents felt off to international viewers. By the 1980s, several Asian and European broadcasters quietly pulled it from rotation. What was once a thrilling pulp story became an awkward example of cultural insensitivity. Still, the animation and tension were top-notch, showing just how cinematic early Hanna-Barbera could be. When re-released years later, fans viewed it differently, part artifact, part lesson. The Ice Monster isn't unwatchable. It's just frozen in time, reminding us how much storytelling standards evolve. Number 5. The Great Train Robbery. Yogi's Gang, 1973. Yogi Bear and his pals were never known for controversy until The Great Train Robbery. In this episode, Yogi's traveling eco-gang faces a greedy outlaw obsessed with stealing resources. It was meant to be a silly morality tale about teamwork and conservation. But overseas, the visuals struck a nerve. In the United Kingdom, the villain's costume, complete with a Confederate-style outfit, caused discomfort. Add in exaggerated depictions of Native American characters in background scenes, and broadcasters decided to skip it entirely. The episode's message about greed and community got overshadowed by its tone-deaf design choices. For Hanna-Barbera, it was business as usual, moral fables wrapped in slapstick. But context changed everything. What felt innocent in 1973 seemed outdated by the time it aired abroad years later. British and Canadian stations quietly replaced it in rotation, and it vanished from reruns for decades. Watching it now, The Great Train Robbery feels like a cartoon trying too hard to teach a lesson while juggling humor that didn't age well. Still, it's a fascinating piece of history, a snapshot of the moment when Yogi's picnic basket antics accidentally ran off the rails overseas. Number 4. The Great Car Race, Wacky Races 1968. Wacky Races was all about chaos cars competition and absurd humor. But The Great Car Race, an episode meant to celebrate friendly rivalry, got an unexpected red flag in Europe. The reason? A few offhand national jokes that didn't travel well. During the episode, characters made tongue-in-cheek remarks about German precision and French detours. In America, it was harmless fun. But when the show aired in France and Germany, those lines were viewed as stereotyping. Some networks even redubbed the dialogue, while others pulled the episode from broadcast entirely. It's ironic considering the show's entire charm was built on caricature. Each racer from Dick Dastardly to Penelope Pitstop represented an exaggerated archetype. But humor based on nationality proved more delicate overseas than Hanna-Barbera expected. Today, The Great Car Race survives mostly through restored collections, where those jokes feel dated but far from malicious. It's a reminder that what's funny in one country can hit a speed bump in another. Wacky Races never meant to offend, it just learned that comedy on wheels sometimes skids on cultural curves. Number 3. Chan Clan in the Carnival Caper, The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan, 1972. What began as a well-intentioned celebration of diversity turned into one of Hanna-Barbera's biggest overseas headaches. The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan followed a family of Chinese-American detectives solving mysteries in their tricked-out van years before Scooby-Doo became a pop culture titan. But the episode Carnival Caper showcased the very problem that doomed the show abroad. The voice acting leaned heavily on old-fashioned accents, and the dialogue mixed English with broken phrases that didn't reflect real speech. Asian broadcasters and advocacy groups objected, saying the show reinforced outdated stereotypes rather than breaking them. As a result, Carnival Caper and other episodes were pulled from international rotation, particularly across Asia. Hanna-Barbera even re-recorded some voices for later dubs, but by then the damage was done. The show's message of family unity got buried beneath poor representation. Today, Chan Clan is rarely seen outside archival circles. It's a strange case, a cartoon created to celebrate cultural visibility that ended up disappearing because it didn't quite understand how to do it. Number 2. Harry's Got a Secret. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, 1973. Long before The Simpsons, Hanna-Barbera experimented with adult-themed animation. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home tackled social issues, family arguments, and midlife struggles in a sitcom format. But one episode, Harry's Got a Secret, pushed boundaries for overseas broadcasters. In it, Harry's marriage hits a rough patch, leading to misunderstandings about his personal life and honesty. It was funny, heartfelt, and surprisingly mature. But for conservative regions abroad, the themes of relationship strain and open communication were too heavy. Some European and Australian stations refused to air it, branding it unsuitable for family viewing. Others trimmed dialogue that hinted at marital tension, softening the episode's core message about trust. Looking back, it's practically wholesome by today's standards, a thoughtful story about family unity, not conflict. Yet in the early 70s, a talking bear could make it on TV faster than a dad trying to talk about his feelings. Harry's Got a Secret stands as proof that Hanna-Barbera wasn't afraid to take risks, even when the world wasn't quite ready for animated honesty. Number 1. The Ransom of Ramoth, The Arabian Nights, 1968. The Arabian Nights was one of Hanna-Barbera's most visually dazzling series blending adventure magic and mythology. But the episode, The Ransom of Ramoth, found itself grounded overseas for one simple reason: it leaned too heavily into fantasy elements that didn't sit well with censors abroad. In the story, the heroes rescue a prince kidnapped by a tyrant using shape-shifting mystical powers and glowing artifacts. For audiences in America, it was thrilling. But certain international markets saw it as culturally inappropriate or overly mystical for children's programming. Broadcasters in the Middle East and parts of Asia declined to air the episode, citing its portrayal of ancient settings and magical powers as out of sync with regional broadcasting standards. Rather than risk backlash, Hanna-Barbera quietly removed the episode from syndication lists. Decades later, it reappeared on compilation DVDs, fascinating fans who had only heard rumors of its existence. The Ransom of Ramoth remains a curious artifact proof that animation can be both universal and oddly specific at the same time. It was never meant to cause controversy. It simply dreamed too big for its moment. So there you have it. 15 Hanna-Barbera adventures that traveled the world only to get stopped at customs. Some were misunderstood, others just too bold for their era. But each one tells a story about how culture, humor, and art evolve across borders. Which of these do you think should make a comeback? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the lost corners of animation history.